Interpreting Chapter 1, Part 3 of the OSH and WC Code 2020 without a structural framework leads to a fragmented and disjointed understanding of its requirements. The 38 distinct definitions in this chapter function as an interconnected matrix that dictates exact legal jurisdiction. Reading these terms alphabetically, from family to working journalist, provides no operational clarity for corporate compliance. To create an actionable mental model, we must reorganize these definitions into 4 functional pillars: geography, subjects, command, and finance. These pillars establish where the law applies, who it protects, who holds the liability, and how money is calculated. Translating the text into this jurisdictional matrix allows a legal professional to define corporate liability boundaries based on the internal logic of the code. The first pillar defines operational geography, starting with industry as the foundational baseline. This includes any systematic activity for goods or services, but specifically excludes sovereign government functions and domestic service. The physical space of manufacturing is defined as industrial premises. This footprint legally includes any attached godowns used for storage. The manufacturing process encompasses physical alterations, pumping utilities like water or sewage, generating power, and even preserving articles in cold storage. A process or substance is classified as hazardous when it risks material impairment to health or environmental pollution unless special care is taken. Extraction geography is defined through the term mine. This includes the excavation site, along with surface offices, open cast workings, and dedicated power stations under the same management. The statute maintains a strict separation between below-ground operations in shafts or excavations and marine operations in shafts or excavations and above-ground operations. In agriculture, a plot of land becomes a regulated plantation once it measures 5 hectares or more. This applies to land used for tea, coffee, rubber, cinchona, or cardamom, as well as contiguous small plots under the same management that meet the size threshold. Sector-specific infrastructure, including motor transport, newspaper establishments, metro, rail, and major ports, rely on the definitions established in their respective parent acts. These precise physical and operational boundaries determine whether an entity falls under the regulatory burden of the code. The second pillar identifies the subjects of the law. The worker category encompasses manual, operational, clerical, technical, and unskilled staff. The code excludes specific groups from this definition: the armed forces, police service, and those employed in a managerial or administrative capacity. For supervisors, classification depends on a wage threshold. They are excluded if they draw wages exceeding 18,000 rupees per month. An interstate migrant worker is defined by cross-border recruitment and is also subject to the 18,000 rupee wage ceiling. Specialized roles, including working journalists and sales promotion employees, are subject to their own specific criteria and managerial exclusions. The definition of family includes spouses, minor children, and dependent parents, but excludes any dependent whose income exceeds government-prescribed limits. Job titles and salary brackets act as binary logic gates, determining a company's legal obligations to an individual. The third pillar dictates corporate accountability and control. A serious bodily injury, such as the permanent loss of a limb or a bone fracture involving machinery, triggers the chain of liability. In a factory, the occupier holds ultimate control, typically a specific director or partner. For mines, the immediate proprietor is the owner, holding statutory liability despite subcontractors. For contract labor, the principal employer oversees the establishment. In audiovisual productions, the producer is the entity responsible for both financing and engaging workers. Operational tracking relies on specific formulas, including the definition of a week, a relay or shift, and the calculation for those ordinarily employed over a year. This pillar is regulated through official notifications, the appended schedules, and prescribed rules. These distinct command titles ensure that liability remains fixed even when complex management or subcontracting structures are in place. The final pillar is the financial engine. Clause ZZJ, wages, is the most mathematically complex definition in the code. Base wages include basic pay, dearness, and retaining allowances. Exclusions include HRA, overtime, bonuses, and provident fund contributions. Under the 50% rule, if exclusions exceed half of total remuneration, the excess is reclassified as wages. Remuneration in kind is capped at 15% of total wages, and equal pay calculations must specifically include components like HRA and overtime. This mathematical restructuring prevents the artificial deflation of basic pay to reduce statutory benefit payouts. These 38 definitions operate as a single machine. A compliance test requires mapping the physical location, verifying the 18,000 rupee threshold, tracing the liability chain, and applying the 50% wage rule. While an alphabetical reading separates these terms, a systemic application shows how they function together to govern labor compliance. Corporate legal safety is achieved by navigating this interconnected jurisdictional matrix.